Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to how to save a Soarer in 25 days. Today we're going to be doing some servicing work, fixing some oil leaks and replacing all the brakes to hopefully get ready for that elusive MOT. And by the end of the video it'd be nice to get the car running. Let's go and take a look. Now then, you'll notice as I take these wheel nuts off that the locking wheel nut has already been removed. Now the car came with 4 locking wheel nuts, which is good for safety, but it's not good when the locking wheel nut you get supplied with the car doesn't fit. So we needed a solution, and it was a little bit of a palaver, to be fair. And what I ended up doing is borrowing these from a neighbour. They're only cheap, 14 quid for the whole set, posted. Like a bolt removal tool, but scaled up a little bit. And I managed to hammer the largest one onto these locking wheel nuts, and they come off a treat. So if you get stuck, go over one of those. Oh, and once those have come off, it should be nice and straightforward. Oh, dreamy. In the bin with the wheels. They look like shit. I hate them. Now then, these are pretty seized on. But let's have a look underneath and see what 10 years of standing has done to the car. Short of the brakes being, well, lipped, rusty, not seized because the car will move when it runs. But that's fine, that's all going in the bin, isn't it? Pad thickness, largely irrelevant, because again, it's going in the bin. Bushes, hard to say, but they don't look horrible. Drop links, again, until we put a bar in and start having to play around, we won't really know. Lower arms, again, tricky. The valve cover gasket leaking has probably been in our favour because it's kept everything rust free, well, in there anyway. Out here, I don't think it looks too bad. Should be fine. Damper looks dry, so we should be good. Hoses look alright. I wouldn't fancy changing those if I needed to, but fingers crossed we can get away with discs and pads and some new fluid, which reminds me I need to order some new nipples for the brakes. Right, let's get the oil draining whilst we're doing this, and then start to tear the brakes down. Good practice before we drop our oil. Remove the cap and remove the dipstick, because if you don't, it'll glug 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 and it'll make a big mess all over your floor. Put those there and there, pull the plug out, try not to make a mess. Happy days. Right, the 14mm drain point has been cracked off, and now it's just a case of undoing. I thought I'd film this bit because it's got potential to go wrong, but it's also got potential to make me look like I know what I'm doing. Damn it. I'll take that. Shit. No, I won't. Oh, I need some blue roll. Bollocks. Obviously it's advisable to, you know, line the oil that's going to fall out of your car up with the little bit that goes into your tub. Otherwise you'll just end up chucking it all over the floor like I have. Silly boy. Oh, dearie me. We'll leave that to drain for as long as it needs. A couple of hours maybe. Seeing as it is cold, because the car doesn't work. Whilst that oil is draining, I disconnected the battery because it will remind me to not start the car with no oil in it. It's also good practice when you're disconnecting all of these bits and bobs. Now, we need to create some access to change plugs. We've got these 6 HT leads that go to this kind of plastic valley plate that needs to be removed. But to get access to it, we're going to have to remove the inlet manifold, which is a pain. Hopefully we don't run into any gasketing issues and breakages as we go along. but it's the only way I can see to do it. So we'll start by removing a few bits here. And do you remove it from the engine and remove the whole thing, or do you remove that one and remove half of it? I don't know. I cannot give you a how-to guide because it's the first time I've ever done it, and I haven't researched how to do it on the internet. So we'll blag it. It's all good. Right, a little bit of Googling later, and I was none the wiser, so I plodded on regardless. Lots and lots of tricky little vacuum lines, electrical connections. I've left the throttle cable connected, and I've undone a couple of bolts, and there was a tricky nut at the front. There's a bracket holding it here, another bracket at the back, and then a hidden nut at the bottom here, and one coolant line, and hopefully it should swivel around. And yeah, a little bit excessive for a plug change, but you know, you do what you got to do. So we'll put it right. A few nice and straightforward 10 mils later, and we're ready to remove the valve cover gaskets, or in America, open the motor. Now, I was wondering as to whether you had to undo these two that look like they held the cams in, but I thought, no, we shall wait. We won't do that. That would be silly. And it was lucky because that was close, because we don't need to. And then we should be able to fiddle this one out as well. Your own time. Delightful. Everything looks very, very fresh inside of here. Camera's struggling a little bit, but now that we're focused in, I'm very happy with that. But then again, it's an understressed, larger engine that hasn't got a huge amount of miles on it. 100,000 miles, that's nothing for one of these, is it? Now in this section of video, I managed to leave my microphone turned off, so let me fill in the gaps. A few days has passed since we last looked underneath the valve covers, and that's because the valve cover gasket I ordered was wrong, which was my fault entirely. So I've ordered a new one, it's arrived, and I can now fit it. But it means I've only got 20 days until my deadline. So we're starting to get a little bit tight. I'm also telling you that I'm just about to fit a new set of brand new spark plugs, which I'm going to torque to 13 foot-pounds and gap to 44 thousandths of an inch. Also, where the valve cover gasket was leaking so badly, oil has leaked into the cylinders and down. So when I remove them, inevitably that's going to fall down into the engine, and on our first start up after a fuel pump, it's going to be a bit smoky. But that should clear nice and quickly. So yeah, maybe in the next section of video I might have a microphone turned on. You never know. No such luck, microphone still turned off. Look at me, completely unaware. I was just about to tell you that everything's torqued down and I got a few bits of trim to put back on, fill it with oil, do the oil filter, turn the key, and she should run like a dream. And then I was going to tell you that the valve cover gaskets were a pain in the ass, but luckily this air filter is the easiest thing I've ever done. 2 clips, clip and come on, get the other one, there you go, good boy. And then lift out the air filter like that, and then put in a new filter. Happy days. It just couldn't be any easier. I probably then told you it was only about £10 and you really should be doing it more often, because that one was really dirty. Oh look, Here's the new fuel pump. Look forward to fitting that soon. Moving on to the brakes. Right, that is the disc and pads removed. Very straightforward. 2 14s for the caliper, 2 17s for the carrier, and then the disc was corroded on there pretty good. So I stuck 2 nuts on there so it didn't fly off, and I leant on it with a persuader. Matt got it off beautifully. So that's all good. Now then, what have we gone for? For brakes. M-Tech. I've gone for drilled and grooved. This was on price point really. M-Tech was pretty reasonably priced, so I went for them. There was a couple of discrepancies left and right with the old pads. Pad wear was pretty good and even really, which is nice. There was pins holding the pads in that side. There wasn't pins in this side, but moving forward, we've got some brand new Mintex pads for the front. I think we've got EBCs for the rear, but it is what it is. It's only a stock car, and they come with a few very small clips. So we'll go with what they give us, and yeah, go from there really. Bang them back on the car. Plenty of copper slips so that will always come off easily moving forward, and bleed the fluid through and job done. Right, that's our front brakes done. Shiny, fresh, new fluid all bled through, and I'll work on the rears a little bit later on. And it's time now to move on to our fuel pump. It's not an OE, so it's not going to be a plug and play, so there should be a bit of soldering involved, but we'll get it out the car, get it on the bench, and we'll have a little look. Remove the rear seats, a ring of bolts, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and comes out pretty easy. Fuel pump and hanger off the job. And this is where it gets oh so frustrating. They are identical in size apart from the size of the spades. Tiny spades on the original, large spades on the oh so upgraded one. And consequently that will push in there, but it won't go all the way on because they're big and those holes are small. And I can't even de-pin and re-pin because the spades in the new loom are larger, which is, oh, so frustrating. So it means I need to cut and resolder and put some heat shrink on. And I don't really fancy doing that 6 inches away from a full tank of fuel. So what I've done is I've cut this one. I'll put a couple of bullet or crimp connectors on there so that I can just push it back together with a bit of tape or heat shrink. And it means that I can put it off the job and do it over here where it's a little bit safer. So yeah, cut, solder, heat shrink, and then we'll play around with this, and then the new sock on the bottom, filter, and pop it back in the car. Should run like a dream, I hope. Also, what does this bit do? I'm assuming it's some sort of suppressor, so I will retain it. So I'll cut here and then solder on. That's good. Now then, moment of truth. The fuel pump is fitted. Insert video. Inside the tank, luckily, looks pretty clean and rust free. You can see where it's had quite a low level of fuel for the last 10 years, which has probably gone in its favour because it stopped it getting all corroded in there. The pump is done. Oh, and a quick note on the rear discs and pads. Discs fitted, pads didn't. So I've removed the old pads, cleaned, degreased, copper greased, and they got enough meat on them to get through an MOT. And I'll order some pads and it'd be all of a 5-10 minute fix to pop some new ones in. So now it is the moment of truth. I would love to say it's the first startup in 10 years, but it's not, because we had it running a month ago before the pump packed up again. Now, ignition has been turned on. I've linked out the FP and B plus terminals on the diagnostics box, just like you would on a Mark 1 MR2, and the pump has ran, and I'm leak free, and it's all good. So let's listen to that iconic 2JZ. Fingers crossed. 2JZ. We're not in America. Yes. That's good. That's good. Let's take a look around it. Sounds good. Oh, ho, ho, yes. That is glorious. That is beautiful. Oops. I slipped. Well, that went pretty well. She starts, she runs, she drives, she stops, and she don't leak. Got a little bit of reassembly to do on the rear seats, and I've just noticed that the rear fog light is tucked up behind the rear bumper and is very corroded, and we'll need that for an MOT. So I'll have a play around with that. The next thing is wheels and tyres, and then book the almighty MOT. Will she pass? Will we get to the Toyota National Day on the 4th of June in time? Stay tuned to find out. Thanks for watching.